Good morning, everyone. This is Mark Chubosky with MCZ Align, and this is episode number 8 of Align Health Insights. And I'm here with colleague and actual dear friend, Milind Kamkolkar. Milind, it's great to have you as a guest on my podcast. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. It's been a long time coming, Mark. So looking forward to being here today.
Yeah, there's some history there for sure. I'm really glad that you're able to make it now.
Yeah.
Look, you've got such a great background. I actually met Milind over a decade ago. I was an advisor, as he was an advisor to a company that I was leading strategic partnerships for. And you just had such a great background at the time, Milind. Just to refresh your memory, you were the chief data officer of Sanofi, and you've had so many great experiences since then. So I'm really looking forward to picking your brain. Look, as you know, like we're like at this really breakneck speed, change of pace time. It's the next revolution, the AI revolution. What does that all mean, right? We're going to get into some of this today.
Sure. Yeah. No, looking forward to it. Lots to talk about.
Absolutely. Okay. So look, with over 20 years, right, of Fortune 500 enterprise, startup, management consulting experience, how has your background shaped your approach to driving strategy and innovation in healthcare and life sciences?
I think I must have held at least one kind of every possible role there is to play.
I think you
Be
might
it,
have, yeah.
be it on the supplier side or vendor side, or be it on the internal side, right? To
Yeah.
a large extent. And I think what that's given me is a unique appreciation of what it takes to build great products, what it takes to think about deploying great products.
Yeah.
Also, and most importantly, it's what is the impact and how do you monetize these great products, right? So, how do you
Yeah,
see the
sure.
whole chain? And I think, whether it was being a lonely sales rep back in the days and waiting by a fax machine on Christmas Eve for a PO to come through, or whether it has been, deploying solutions out to 52 plus countries, right, globally, and understanding the nuances that it takes to deliver these solutions, particularly cultural, people, emotional, configurable, all those kinds of things. And then, of course, getting into enough technical depth so you can give the appropriate amount of flexibility to your team to just go and crush it on building great products that put a smile to people's face when they use it.
Yeah.
I think that's where sort of these cumulative experiences has sort of led me to just loving getting to just build stuff that people use.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. Yeah. It just reminds me, right? It's like we get into these big frothy moments of capital investment, right? So I thought it was a half a trillion, but I read somewhere the other day that I think it's like $470 billion has gone into AI writ large across all of the verticals. Yet, a lot of these sharps are saying that's clawback, maybe north of $1 trillion of revenue to make that invested capital meaningful.
Yeah.
And you're just reminding me, right? It's oh so much more, right? And it really comes down to people, their aptitude to change, education, etc.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think what's been kind of unfortunate, through all of this has just been the unnecessary hype cycle, which is,
Yeah.
it's a necessary evil, I guess, whether it's media, whether it's venture teams, whether it's whatever, that's sort of overinflating, if you will, expectations. But I think if you really look at history, and its repetition that's almost so predictable, we are exactly where we need to be for AI today. We are exactly where we need to be for company and corporate adoption. We are exactly in that period of time that people are appropriately skeptical and appropriately looking for bigger answers. And I think a lot of this, still comes down to fundamentals, man. When you peel back the skin, it's fundamentals. At the end of the day, companies have culture. Culture drives configurations. Configurations drive large consulting implementations. Consulting implementations need something to actually sell and configure and build products around. And that's where sort of this, let's call it this universe of capabilities for people chipping away at the edge or optimizing core is just so essential. And
Yeah.
we come up with new marketing jargon to help frame all of that, right?
Yeah. It is pretty funny. I think Elon Musk said on All In podcast last week, instead of, solar energy, let's call it star powered energy,
Yeah.
and it's just,
And
it's
maybe that's true. Maybe that's inevitable. And I think for me, Mark, the thing that I've been thinking about is, I don't know, I've had a little bit of downtime to think about a lot of these sorts of things. And I'm not
yeah,
saying my view is the right view. It's simply a view. Um, but a lot of it is just how you frame the time frame under which you want to measure this. I mean, what if in
Yeah.
reality we're only halfway through the Industrial Revolution, right?
Hmm.
What if we're only halfway through that? What if everything that was done, horses to cars, cars to horsepower, and horsepower to EV, EV to sensing technologies, all of this sorts of stuff. And, of course, all the adjacent things that support all of it as well, right? Whether it's chip manufacturing, fabrication, mining, all of those sorts of things. These are all part of a much larger ecosystem with the ideal intent to ensure that we still have a healthy planet that can ensure healthy survival rates as well. Um, my space is in healthcare, man. That's what I've done. I love
Yeah.
that space, but I think increasingly the lines are blurred between industrial and health, and really you
Well,
can't have one without the other.
manufacturing. You
And
need it.
yeah, you
You
need it.
know. All right. Well, look, I think we kind of alluded to this, but when we think about market challenges, right? We think about touching on distinct challenges in current markets. So, well, the healthcare and life sciences market. So, what are some key examples in health tech, as an example, that leaders can start doing to address them?
Look, I think with the modernized architectures that we have today in machine learning, so let's not differentiate between AI and ML. They're all ML. They're all statistical
Fair
models
enough.
at the end of the
Yeah.
day, right? But I think with the more modernized architectures that are coming through, specifically agentic architecture, the first opportunity that I see that we can really monetize and start seeing demonstrable value in is in workflow optimization, right? So this could be document generation, document curation, document insight derivation, all of those sorts of things, all the standard workflows that are uh, let's say human moderated, human curated, certainly have options for bottom line operating cost improvement, right? And I think this is an area where, let's not overthink it. Yes, a good portion of it is probably going to be cost avoidance than true savings at this stage. But that's a great place to be in. That's a great demonstrable place to be in where you could say, yeah, look, okay, yes, we had to hire 5 additional people or 10 additional people to be able to build
Yeah.
into these workflows. But the ability to do something faster in and of itself is good. Now, what still needs to be adjudicated on is how many agents are in fact enough. Do these agents actually have the maturity and replication, if you will, or reproducibility of, say, a tenured expert who's had a 20-year career path? That hasn't been done yet. So really the way I would look at it, there are two axes of optimization. Axis number one, which is what we're seeing today, is the workflow optimization. And
For sure.
companies that are building here, whether it's, let's drop a few names to be specific, a Bridge, Open Evidence. I mean, these are
Yeah.
fantastic companies that are solving
Plentiful,
problems.
integral, right? Yeah. I mean, it's where the majority of,
It's where the majorities are,
yeah.
right? I think, the AI for drug discovery companies are kind of falling into that same bucket as well. But as they're beginning to integrate lab automation or virtual lab capabilities, we're seeing that come to fruition as well. Same thing in clinical trials as there's increased site focus now to just reduce the burden on sites to be able to then afford reducing the burden for patients to participate in trials. I mean, all of these things are good things, but that's axis number one, workflow
Mhm.
optimization. And that's where we see the vast majority
Yeah.
of
For sure.
deployment and opportunity. I think the next 5 years, and yes, I am going to say 5 years because let's
Sure.
not forget, it takes a shit ton of change management to get anything done before then. So I'm
Yeah.
going to go into, whilst technology is moving fast, it doesn't mean that people can adopt. And I'll address this with one other anecdote I think it's important to recognize that Satya Nadella just spoke about recently as well. And that is the reasoning axis, axis number Y, right? And here, our current state of reasoning is about as good as undergrad to PhD level. Where it improves in going from PhD to tenure is largely going to be driven by proprietary data modes, i.e., the data that's sitting inside
Mm.
companies. But let's not forget that data sitting inside companies is extraordinarily biased by the culture of those companies.
Mhm.
Engage with that data. So not all data is going to be, as long as you can just, open the floodgates up and do that. I think what Lilly did recently with Toon Labs is a fantastic example of how Lilly can really take advantage of the power of social networks, of the power of corporate VC, if you will, and independently invested companies to start participating in what overall, arguably, could be a win-win for the entire healthcare space.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we've gone from PhD level to KOL, right?
Right.
It does not mean we've gone to KOL to uber KOL,
Yeah.
right? Because let's also face it, most KOLs are rather protective of their turf. And I often
Hmm.
have my own personal opinions about what is the actual tenure of a KOL? How long does it even
Yeah.
last and should it even last, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of emerging facets that are coming through. And I think those fundamentally should be driven by patient understanding and patient sophistication and learning over time.
Yeah.
So that's sort of where I see those two axes. I would say when you really circle all of that AI stuff, the thing we have to keep in mind is that, yes, whilst tech is being built extraordinarily fast, the infrastructure and the regulatory environment is not. We can't even get space for data centers, dude. Farmers, ranchers, all these sorts of folks are being hoodwinked by the big tech players. And it is disgraceful. It is truly disgraceful to see how people who are living on these lands are basically given up, and there's been enough articles citing the NDAs, et cetera, that these companies are doing. These are truly nefarious actions, and I think they do need to be talked about more publicly.
Interesting. Yeah, you said a lot there. I can go down a lot of different rabbit holes. Like I was thinking workflow, like, and you go to like uh cancer, like who's getting a KRAS test? You know what I mean? Like that's a workflow issue. And but there's a lot of people at those sites that don't really want to adopt new workflows,
That's
right?
right.
So it becomes a people issue, right?
Yeah.
Um, talking about investment, I mean, it seems like the VCs with respect to healthcare aren't long-term aligned to their end stakeholder, whoever they're serving, and they pretty much choose a category winner and then only invest in a limited amount of companies. And then you get into all sorts of scenarios where people are hiring sales ahead of engineering. They're trying to catch up engineering to sales. So it's a mess. There's a lot of variables. But I guess what you're saying, ultimately, and just going back to something about a few minutes ago, is this is what it is. This is exactly where we're supposed to be, and this is how things end up changing over a period of time.
Well, I mean, we're seeing VC change already, right? I mean, I love the VC market. I love a lot of what they do. I think, and I have a lot of good friends in that space. And I
Yeah,
genuinely believe they are trying to
I'm
find
not.
bets.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying
Got it.
historically, right? We just look at the
Yeah.
$60 billion over the past 10 years that have been invested in digital health. What's the return on invested capital look like, Milind? It's not very good.
Well, yeah. I mean, in pure financial sense, it's terrible.
Yeah,
Natural sense, it's terrible. However, in our understanding, though, of human health and disease, we've actually made leaps and bounds,
truth.
right?
Yeah,
Maybe actually the fact that we haven't figured out value-based care, right, is in and of itself a testament, right? Like our reimbursement codes actually the way we should be evaluating. Do you even need a payer strategy when D2C is a viable option now? We've already seen that with the GLP-1 franchises that are going through. Um, the fact that clinically validated outcomes have been done. I mean, there have been some great companies who've invested extraordinary amounts of capital to really run sophisticated trials to measure. Reference companies like Click Therapeutics, for example, right,
yeah,
that have been pioneering in this space. And I think, yeah, God bless those guys, man. It takes a shit ton of courage, right, to get that stuff done.
yeah,
And I think we have reached, a certain plateau, but I do think there's a different capital profile that needs to go into these companies. I'm not convinced the bar of we need faster revenue is the right bar as well. There's a lot of PLG related companies that are being developed that I think honestly will just be monetized out, or not monetized out, sorry, democratized out and commoditized out. So I
yeah.
don't see them necessarily winning the game either.
I guess what made me think about it is when you said, "Well, look, you know what? What the heck? I'm going to go 5 years," and I'm thinking to myself, "Well, who's going to let you go 5 years?" And that's the thing.
Truthfully, man, I'm probably the asshole for thinking like that. I mean, let's play this spin mark, I don't know. I figure, again, and I go back to that frame of maybe we're only halfway through the Industrial Revolution. Maybe we're only halfway through. Maybe in that Moore's law curve or E-room, whatever damn curve you want to choose, we're only just at that inflection point, right? And we've unlocked a couple of things. But truthfully, I think medicine is deeply personal to
For
any
sure.
patient. Yes, of course, there are generalized populations, but these populations that were previously underserved now have the early statistically meaningful data sets that have been generated. Arguably, yes, they all contain biases, but I mean, let's face it, man, it doesn't matter what data set you choose to build, there's always going to be a data bias. So let's get over that high horse, right?
Yeah.
The reality is it's always going to be there. And we can always pick and choose what's there. But you know what? In the absence of nothing, and we get the opportunity to help people, we should be doing that. And that's why I think that just takes a bit of time.
Yeah. It seems like people choose what LLM they use based on who they like best that owns the LLM.
I know, well, I
you know,
know, same mark. Honestly, they really are. There's very little difference.
Okay. Well, look, based on, what we're talking about, right? I think I'll just ask, a revenue and growth focused question really quickly and say, like, how can healthcare organizations achieve quality revenue growth while staying aligned with their mission? Seems like I've seen it a lot. I've been doing this for 23 years. I've staffed a
Mm.
lot of companies, and you would be surprised how often that is not the case, that can happen. And I have my own opinions, but I want to hear yours.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, well, I think let's talk about revenue growth from two different groups, right? Supplier side versus,
Yeah.
the people leveraging these, the enterprise companies, right?
Yeah.
I think revenue growth from a supplier side, particularly in this AI space, you are really competing for signal detection and signal generation relative to the noise. Um, Everything's agentic now. Everything is orchestration. Everything is blah 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 blah. And honestly, man, having been a buyer, I don't know how half of my friends and colleagues in those situations are even trying to figure out what the hell do I buy in all this space, right? And how much do I really need? Like, it really, honestly, it reminds me of the early days of cloud computing purchasing, right? And then buying the API library, buying this, buying that, right? Just to have the whole ecosystem. And here are some central truths, man. Integration is not going away anytime soon. That is still the goddamn number one problem.
Yeah.
And these companies have addressed this in a meaningful way. Their way of saying it is just use our platform. And I'm sorry, it
Yeah.
doesn't work anymore, right? That is,
No.
it never worked then. It hasn't worked today. So I don't know why we keep beating our heads against that same wall, right?
Yeah.
Is still a problem for companies. So really, to think about it, you really have to come in with a clear and direct business case, not just use case. And I think
Yeah.
the mistake that most suppliers make is that they work very, very hard to define use cases. That in and of itself is the wedge case where you hear VCs talking about this. And that is absolutely important. What's your cold start problem and how you're addressing it. But ultimately, man, if it doesn't make economic sense for your buyer, why the hell would they want to buy it? Right? Like, literally. And I think most buyers today are in matrix organizations. There's not a single buyer. There may be a budget holder, but most of these budgets are also coming from multiple pools.
Yep.
So I think the art of securing deals has become more complex.
For
I
sure.
think you definitely need consultants as part of or ISVs as part of your strategy. If you don't have that, you don't get to protect your margins. And particularly if you're a company that's been invested in from VC angle, you want to protect your margins if you're sort of Trojan horsing as being as a SaaS company. Personally, I think in healthcare and life sciences, which is where my exposure has been focused on,
Hmm.
I'm not convinced there are any true SaaS players in this industry, or you can build a real SaaS company here, which is why
Very few.
you need a channel ISV partner from the get go. And the reality is there's a few behemoths out there, but they're good behemoths, and they're also looking for solutions under which they can take to market. Because even in their own world, the PowerPoint templates change, the colors change, but the content's the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Man, I mean, just talking to some stakeholders like from health systems and pharma companies, payers, the responses from RFPs over the past decade has like increased by the order of magnitude, right? They put out an RFP and it used to be 4 or 5 companies. Now it's like 40 or 50 companies.
It's crazy, man. I mean, look, I'll tell you, look, having just done on both sides, right? Responding to an RFP is a pain in the ass. Producing an RFP is a pain in the ass, right? Because even as someone who's producing it, you think you've answered you think you've understood the questions that need to be asked. man, a lot of the times there's at least 40% of questions that you haven't asked, where the really good responses are the ones that have actually surfaced concerns and the really best ones also are the ones that frankly have called you out on BS as well. Right.
Yeah. I think people in my audience should be taking note, especially the ones trying to sell some of these things right now.
Well, look, I mean, look, I'm just a guy, man. I'm happy to help
It's
anyone
good.
in that
It's
space. But
it's a very real take though, right? And it just maybe sharpening the pencil a couple times before responding to these things might not be the worst
yeah,
idea.
yeah,
Uh, okay, let's talk about operational efficiency. It's
yeah.
essential. What strategies can healthcare tech firms use to streamline operations in service of customers and their mission at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's enough anecdotal evidence that is more than anecdotes now. I think there's patterns, let's put it that way, buyer patterns,
Hmm.
profiles of buyers. Not all buyers are equal. Not all buyers are on the same page. They have their own phenotypes. And so I think the biggest area of opportunity for COGS really is in the customer service and your go to market strategy. I think that's really where. So, how many reps do you really need? How many accounts do you really need? Who are your first onboard accounts that you really want to win? Versus who are the ones who are historically pilot with anyone but don't do anything after that, right?
Yeah.
And I think there needs to be a bit of a wake up call there. Sorry to call it out, but the reality is there are some people who are just flagrantly experimenting and will continue to flagrantly experiment because their organization is not set up to scale.
Hmm.
And I think that's something that if I was in the vendor shoes today, um, you just want to be acutely aware of. I think I don't want to call out names here. They can call people call me after, call or email me after. But there are certain companies that I just think do a disservice to the startup community, and often sort of give empty promises. Um, that said, again, I don't think it's by design. I think it's just simply their organizations are not set up to scale beyond pilots, right?
Yeah, we've seen that a lot.
You know,
And yeah,
yeah,
for sure. Okay, so AI in transformation in the context of AI, right, and business transformation. Now, how is AI freeing personnel from obsolete tasks to enhance productivity? And we'll focus on healthcare, obviously.
yeah. I don't think we've been freed up yet.
I don't think so either,
I don't
but
think we've been freed up yet. I think the opportunity exists, and I think it's I don't know, I sound like a bit of a philosopher's stone today, right? But let's just go into it for a second. But I think the big issue with how we've been thinking about AI today is that we really have a good understanding of what questions to ask, and I think unfortunately corporate anywhere. I don't want to blame this on corporate America because I love corporate America. It's what's given me my
yeah.
ability to grow. But if I just kind of reflect on, again, first principles, man, like undergrad, we're taught to ask a lot of questions. Grad school, ask a lot of questions about one question. Corporate, don't ask any questions. Just build a PowerPoint with 3 bullet slides and just focus on your Excel models, right? So we've lost the art of asking questions that matter. And as a result of that,
Hmm.
we don't really know how to engage with this. And I'm really grateful for people like Angela Radcliffe as an example and
Yeah,
folks,
she's great.
right, that are putting together these courses for healthcare folks. I think that, and there were plenty of other folks, but she's the first one that came to mind. Plenty of other folks that are doing this as well. But, um, I just think there are people that are working extremely hard to start educating all of us to start experimenting. But really, it also comes down to just ownership and time ownership, right? I mean, are you willing to put in the time to just learn? Are you
Hmm.
put in the time to just screw up? When I was first doing it, even just prompting, right? I'll give you first example. I mean,
Sure.
even just prompting me. I mean, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was just kind of asking questions as I would a Boolean search query or something I would do in Google, right? And the answers you got seemed amazing, but you're like, hang on, that's a personality that is appropriately inflating my ego, but it doesn't necessarily do right on the answers, right? So
Hmm. Hmm.
then I realized actually you can ask the prompt to create a prompt for you that optimizes for things. Then you really start learning how to create really good
Yeah.
prompts over a period of time. Now I just have a small library of prompts that I use for certain tasks like research, like modeling economic workflows. We're still far away from LBOs and DCF calculations in any of these models. But, and I think you still need oversight in those things. But, I think to a large extent, though, we're getting better, but it still needs a lot of
Yeah.
oversight.
Yeah, I mean, just from a personal note, I love music. I like to do music production. So I've been using tools like Suno,
Yeah,
which automatically creates, an AI song, but then you can use bits and pieces of it. I use Sora to make, videos
yeah.
from it. And anyway, even just a little something you're interested in, which is not necessarily, healthcare, but you realize like over a period of time, you just iterate your prompts and you start really getting a much, much different picture of what you really want versus what you started with.
Oh, for
So it's
sure.
very
Look,
similar, right?
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, one thing I've been personally fascinated. Look, I mean, I I grew up in a Hindu household.
Yep.
I love mythologies of all cultures. I mean, I think if I
Sure.
wasn't doing this kind of stuff, I would have loved to have been an archaeologist or something like
Yeah.
that. I just find history fascinating. But one of the things I've been playing around with is just within the Hindu culture thing. And I grew up learning that honestly, not from reading scriptures, but from comic books. That was my interpretation
Sure.
of it. In India, there was a certain comic book series that I think did a very good job in teaching. But I always imagine, how come I could see these Greek mythologies come to life, like Clash of the Titans and stuff like that? It was just awesome movies. But why hasn't anyone done that in sort of the Hindu culture? So I've been experimenting with Sora and some of these
Cool.
tools to just create my own movies because I want to be able
Yeah.
to teach my own kids about
Yeah.
some of these things. And, look, ultimately they have to decide what's right for them. But
For sure.
I don't know. I think just over the years, I've become increasingly spiritual. I'm not necessarily biased with any one religion or not, but just the ability to see what I read and translate that into a movie. I'm more of a visual thinker and interpreter. That just does me wonders. I'm like, holy shit, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. You and I both have become more spiritual as we've grown older too. It's something that I've really rediscovered a couple years ago. It's a great thing. I hope your kids and that's a great way to teach, right? And that's awesome. There's the education piece.
I hope it works for them, in between them wanting to create their own hoodie lines and stuff like that.
Yeah. I heard about that. That's awesome. That's pretty cool. All right. So macro trends, like economic policies are obviously pivotal in healthcare. I mean, like
Right.
one could say that, every major stakeholder in healthcare, this is what probably there's on their mind 90% of the time. I would call out like, the Inflation Reduction Act, max fair pricing, right?
Right. Right.
Everything going on with 340B and on, right? It's what props up healthcare. How are they impacting competitive positioning right now?
You know, um, this is probably a very, very unpopular opinion. I'm probably getting into trouble, but
Perfect. Yeah.
well, I I'm actually very much in favor of some of the new policies coming through.
Like MFN.
MFN, IRA. I mean, these are. I mean, how do we not see these come through? I mean, come on.
Right.
Oh, I mean, and I've had the chance to live in Europe. I've had the chance to live in other places as well. And yeah, the quality of life and quality of care are fantastic until it's not. We left Switzerland because we just couldn't find help for my youngest who's special needs
Yeah.
in English. If we were a native speaker, of course we would have stayed there longer. But I think all of these were necessary forcing functions to an industry that has just gotten used to copy and pasting a lot of its artifacts, right? When you think about new commercial models that need to be built, this is not about tech, man. This is about, really thinking about what role do CAMs really have? What role do FRMs really have? What role do MSLs really have? What role do field reps really have? What are the KPIs matter? Not the KPI puke that we have today or the metric madness that exists in dashboards today. I mean, I honestly don't know how the hell anyone makes decisions out of those sorts of things anymore, right? And I remember I was equally guilty of building those things, right?
Yeah.
So look at it. I think back, okay, well, will these things actually have a new forcing thing? Now, I also don't think sort of some of the more bullish approaches of saying, well, okay, we're just going to apply whatever America does to every other country. That's also not the answer as well. That's, I think, the lazy person's answer, right, to doing that. So I'm actually quite encouraged that, and look, man, off the record, you speak to these commercial leaders, they all want to do something more meaningful and more valuable. Even D2C advertising, those some of these commercials, whilst a handful of them actually help people to understand that there's an alternative, potentially for something they might be facing, to the largest extent, they are the number one commercials we all want to skip. you know?
Oh yeah.
So how is that helping anybody? Yet the exorbitant amount of wasted spend that is going into these is shameful, you know? So I think there are opportunities, right, to really start delivering better commercial models, delivering better market access models, and really optimizing where we're continuing to optimize in the world of clinical trials and clinical outcomes. On one perspective, we really have not begun the optimization for market access. And I think that should be a global phenomenon. I think as countries can no longer be considered developing countries, I think, there are plenty of countries that can pay for drugs and should pay for medicines, particularly that are life saving. So I'm looking forward to an appropriate change in this space.
Yeah, we're going to go to micro trends, but before I do that, because I feel like this question's somewhat relatable to some of the things that you're saying, and let's just focus on some of these stakeholders that we just talked about previously when we were discussing the macro trends. The true north of any healthcare company is really mission aligned growth. I mean,
Yes.
definitionally, it should
Oh,
be. If it's not, like,
oh.
okay, like I mean, of course we can debate that some other time. But what step can leaders take to ensure that the tech initiatives support this equitable access to health and medicine?
Well, I think, look, tech is largely a data business, right?
Yeah,
Tech is largely a data business. It allows us to collect, generate, and interrogate data, right?
yeah,
And as a result of that, what we miss is good data that can be generalizable or useful for multiple utilities, right?
hmm
So when I think about how can tech be more mission aligned, I think where it generates and makes available clinically actionable data that can be generalized where it needs to be, but can also unveil patterns of specificity that are absolutely essential in uncovering unmet disease and addressing unmet care paradigms. That's where I think the value of tech should be. And that's where I think every digital or tech leader who is in these roles should be aligning themselves with the economics of tech relative to the mission.
yeah. It seems like based on what you're saying and what I know, there's a lot of obvious problems that lead me to believe that we're nowhere near even close to that mission. I mean, that reality. You know,
Look, I think it's not from malintent. I think it's more just um,
I
securing
don't think so.
to be able to do that work and doing it deliberately, doing it with design, right? Doing it with intent. I mean, look, I mean, let's face it, man. I mean, look, if you're a corporation, you need to be making money. Let's just be really clear
Yeah,
on that thing, right? I mean, and I am a firm capitalist, man. I do not pretend to not be one, right? So I am all for doing that. I just think you can do that in a meaningful way that aligns itself to goals. But if you kind of do it just on the fluffy, we should be helping patients. We should be, I mean, that just, it's no wonder you don't acquire appropriate budgets and stuff like that, man. I mean, that's the fluffy stuff that
I,
does, but how do you make money? How do you do it efficiently?
I'm just going to say it. What I was thinking in my head was like, how many multinational corporations that bought the same data set over 2 to 3 times?
Ah, bro, I mean, I was equally
I'm just saying, like, you know,
yeah, I was so guilty of that. I remember one of my roles very early in Novartis was to reduce that spend, and of course
yeah,
it wasn't just me. I mean, I would not call myself a hero in that. Literally took a village within Novartis
yeah,
to negotiate with some of the behemoths in the industry, and and I get there running a business, man. But at some point in time, you also got to be held accountable for the shit you deliver, right? I mean, if you're just doing slices and dices of data sets and expecting people to pay for the same crap over and over again because they want some slight nuance, I mean, honestly, you get what A, as a buyer, you get what you pay for. And B, you can't blame the vendor at that point in time, right, for doing that. But as a
yeah,
vendor, be better.
yeah.
Be
It's
better.
just, I'm just saying, like, it just seems like some of these big corporates just need to do a project and really get everyone on the same page with what assets they have. It would be a nice starting point.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, look, we're all saying data's the moat, right? Well, okay, where? How good is it? How do you value it?
Yeah,
We've taken, should you be paying it for 3 times over? Or should there be quality associated SLAs where you only pay once And for any new feed that comes through, it should be met with the appropriate quality OSLAs, or at least flagging them for where a difference exists. And I'm not sure that's always happening
I mean,
consistently.
look, I'm not even complaining. What I'm saying is this is people internally at these organizations telling me this stuff. You know what I mean? It's just like these are the problems that they feel.
People are
Uh,
frustrated. People are frustrated on both sides, but that is what we're dealing with. And the reality is healthcare data is just inherently Swiss cheese like. I mean, you've probably heard this quite a lot, but whether it's claims, whether it's epidemiology data, whether it's population health data, whether it's genomics data, whether it's all the subtypes of omics that also exist, whether it's imaging data. I mean, we've been seeing those PowerPoint slides for the last 20 years. And when I see this current generation saying, this is the first time we're going to do this, I'm like, come on, give me a break. You know, what is actually changing in this instance? Is it the quality? Like, just go to fundamentals. Is it the quality of data collection? Is it the representation of patient populations that you're able to stratify? I think some companies are doing it really, really well. Like, I think I look at what Ron Alpha and his team are doing at Noetic. I mean, that's a company, Ron gets it, and his team gets it. And they're doing really great stuff in that space. And I think, there are certain companies that I think, in that space that are really driving um, a new data generation businesses that in and of themselves are not there to generate data, but recognize the criticality of it. And also, in fairness, appreciating the venture companies who appreciate the capital inflow that is more OPEX to be able to do that work as opposed to CapEx. But the upside of that, right, is pretty phenomenal.
yeah. If you could change your OpEx into CapEx, that's even better.
Well,
Right.
yeah, but you got to do one or the other. I mean, I think it's time to stop sitting on the fence of which came first, right? The chicken or the egg, right?
For sure. Agreed. Okay, micro trends. So what micro trends are you seeing, such as like, personalization or, what are these micro trends that you're seeing like starting to like shape the near term future here in
Yeah.
healthcare?
I think, look, in drug discovery, perturbational biology is everything, right? It's everything, but I think we still haven't made the appropriate connect of perturbational biology relative to how it impacts indication selection, target selection, or probability of success. And until we make that connect at an economic level, not just at a scientific level, it remains a scientific experiment. Sorry to
Yeah.
say, great insights, but let academia do that, right? That's what they're phenomenal at. But if you're a company in these early stages, that should not be the goal, right?
Mm,
I think it's a byproduct if you're able to publish papers and all that. That's fantastic, but that should not be the goal. Number two is in the world of clinical trials. I'm incredibly encouraged that we're moving past just patient identification for trial recruitment, but really working on tools and capabilities at sites to improve on consent and enrollment. The
mhm.
hard stuff, the 11th mile kind of stuff, right? And that's
Yeah, yeah.
I'm really encouraged by. I also am just super excited about the people that are working on reducing DB lock. Just the hard shit on the back end, right? That can cost millions of just not getting your operational shit done well. And part of my French, but I think that I love the boring AI, man. I
Yeah,
really
yeah.
do. I think that's just awesome stuff because I know what a
Yeah.
pain in the ass it was to do that. The thing is, it's funny, Mark. No one ever gives you a pat on the back for building a great database. They just
No.
expect it. But the costs that go into that is 90% of the budget half the time. So any improvements on efficiency we can do there are really great. Look, I look at one of my favorite mentees, Umut Esser, and the work that they're doing at Weave Bio, right? Around
Yeah.
drug, right? I mean, Umut's a phenomenal guy, just a genuine good human being and super smart guy. But just the work that him and his team are doing over there, I think is phenomenal. I think is definitely going to change things, and look, I think manufacturing is still a wide open space, hugely wide open space. There's a lot that we can do there. And also in the commercial space, there's a lot that we can do over there. And that's really where it matters. I just don't see enough happening in market access. I don't see enough happening in pricing and forecasting, and particularly in the newer therapeutic modalities. This is going to be an increasing need. Care
Yeah.
delivery, of course, we're seeing tremendous progress to just help doctors and reduce their burnout.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so over the past 10 years, with this like high failure rate of tech adoption, right? What lessons can this next generation of builders learn from that? You've been in the trenches, so what can you
Yeah,
say?
look, I love the exuberance and arrogance of youth. I was there once upon a time as well that, "Oh, these old timers is, too slow, blah, 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 blah." But I think over the years, you begin to appreciate the shoulders that you now stand on, right? Those very people that we're calling slow were once upon a time the innovators, the movers, the shakers that got us to where we are today and have provided a platform for this younger generation to be able to build, leverage, and break. So I would just ask innovators today not to say respect your elders. I think that would be a little bit
That's what I
facetious,
was.
you know? But I think just respect the shoulders that you stood on and recognize that some of this is Stockholm syndrome conditioning. When you enter some of these big companies, companies move only at the pace at which their culture allows them. And some things are just honestly hard to change. I mean, I would argue these innovators today shouldn't be preparing for their generation. They actually should be preparing for the generation after them,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's where, and again, I'm equally super guilty of that. That in my youth or in my younger
Me too.
days, I just thought everyone else was slow. Why are these old guys slow? But it's not on them. It's just respecting that companies move at company pace. Break, 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 break. Push, 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 push. Challenge, challenge, challenge. Don't give up on those. But just understand you're one part of a massive timeline of change.
Yeah, that's great advice. Okay, so people are at the heart of all of this transformation. However slow or fast it goes. How can leaders foster a culture that embraces role evolution and mission focus?
I think if you, I'll speak from healthcare. The only thing that matters is improving the outcomes for humanity. It's the
Yeah,
only thing that matters, right? And as long as you center that as your core focus, then everything you do around that, you should be asking the question: in what way does this move the needle for human beings, for human health? If it
yeah,
does move the needle, go ahead and do it. If it's just some micro process that you're inventing, sure, you can check in and check out, and maybe you can be that wonderful 3x founder who's just shown that they can invest and reinvest. But really, do you want to be the one horse, what do they call that phrase? One trick pony,
one trick pony.
but just you've been able to figure out tricks so you can be just different versions of a pony? Or do you want to be someone who's truly building a legacy? Right. And I
Yeah.
think, I don't know, like, again, you can still make a lot of money, but just focus your intent on the right things. And that right thing to me is advancing our understanding of human health.
Okay, so these are like quasi personal professional questions. So, like, as an advocate for global sustainability,
Yes.
uh, how can healthcare organizations integrate sustainable practices into their growth and efficiency strategies?
Yeah. Look, I think with the increasing focus on AI today,
Yeah,
we are at probably one of the biggest risk parameters we have today with data center proliferation, um, nature's resources exhaustion, and uh, frankly, um, not doing right by the beautiful lands that we get to incorporate today. And I think there are increasingly awesome companies that are thinking about first principles, the role of water, the role of natural resources, all of these sorts of things that are first principle things that we just need to maintain, as we do sustainability, and it's not about, really, it's not about ESG, man. I mean, whatever, that's all sounds good, but hard, little hard
no,
to
I mean, look,
explain.
just let's think about just about water real quick. Like,
Yeah.
you don't really think about it every day, right? Because we are lucky enough to have clean water here, but I mean,
Well, is it
Pretty,
clean?
pretty.
Is it clean?
And do we know? And how
Please,
important?
always no, it's not clean.
It's pretty damn important.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know.
look, we are volunteering the incidence of cancer just through PFAs, PFOAs, right? We are
Oh god. Do
volunteering these sorts of things. I mean, I don't, not to bring people down, man. I'm not trying to. This is
you have
not
a
a
home filtration system?
sorry.
Do you have a home filtration system?
No, man, it's too
I
late. For me, it's too late. I mean,
I
we're
think
already drinking this shit, right? So it's look, these are forever chemicals, and I think there's probably a generation or two, maybe less, right, that are in a unique position to start addressing. Look, if these are chemically manufactured, that means we can create chemical capabilities or other capabilities that should be able to break them down, right? So I am encouraged by companies and people that are working actively to get this crap out of our waterways, right?
mm,
Um, and so I'm encouraged, by people who work on that. I think additionally, we're already operating at a 40% deficit across North America alone in terms of shortage of clinical grade water. It's
wow.
right. And it's worsening. Think about the municipality grids, right, that are heavily regulated today. These guys have to think about people first, naturally. But then you've got these mega categories that need energy and power and water to supply data centers, to supply prefab for chips, semiconductors, and so forth, right? Not to mention the beverage industry that needs water to provide all the sodas that we're drinking. So there is a universe of stuff that's going on, man, where healthcare is a distant afterthought, unfortunately, for access to that kind
Mm,
of environment. And so I,
wow.
um, you know, uh, we got to do something about that.
We really do. That's very interesting takes. Also sobering. But hey, it is what it is. It's the
I mean,
reality.
there's no reason a first world country like North America should be operating at a 40% deficit. That's just stupid.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit dangerous. Okay, so you are a neurodiversity advocate. How can healthcare leaders build inclusive teams to leverage diverse perspectives and innovation?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, man. It's deeply personal. My youngest son is a
Yeah,
neurodiverse kid. We still don't know what part of the spectrum he's on the spectrum or what kind of study. He's just
yeah,
in that space. And, I've seen him and his friends, from kindergarten growing up, how all these boys and girls, sort of just grew up. And I think the fear for any parent who has a child like that is, again, just first the principles, right? Most importantly, when they turn 18, all of these services, at least in North America, that you get through IEP and so forth, is things that disappear, right? Or things that disappear or are very difficult to acquire.
hmm
That's number one. And number two, just if you're not a parent of a neurodiverse child, encourage your children to also play with those other kids because you know what all
hmm
they're looking for is just camaraderie, just friendship,
yeah,
and just being treated as a respectful equal. I think there's a lot of kids that do that, but unfortunately, the biases we as parents have also
yeah,
unfortunately seeps through to the next generation.
yeah,
Number three, I think it's where I'm most encouraged. I mean, honestly, the biggest thing that I've seen with things like ChatGPT and so forth that are out there is just how accessible these tools are to children like mine, who are 16. But when they think about going into the new world, my son was asking me the other day. He goes, "Hey, look, so I know at some point I have to live on my own, but I don't even know how to do rent. Like, how do I even do that?" Well, first of all, darling, you don't have to think about those sorts of things, right? Let's go do that. Let's go do that. And what does it mean to rent a place? What should you look
mhm,
for in ChatGPT? And just going through those sorts of things. So those sorts of resources I find are really helpful. So I think for corporations that are doing this, look, obviously you have to optimize for the right skill sets, for the right functions in your company. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but make a little room, make a little room for just good-hearted people who just want to know they're valuable. And on the
yeah,
personal side, all they're looking for again is just friendship.
yeah, yeah. It's awesome. It's really interesting when you communicate with someone that you don't, or even communicating with someone in a different language and you don't understand them. when you finally do and you see their perspective, it actually is from the other side really refreshing as well.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean? So I think people will get a lot of reward from interacting with people that aren't like them. You know,
yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, look, we're all wired weirdly anyway. Let's be
I am for sure.
we've all got our own nuances. Doesn't make us perfect, but you know, yeah, I just think neurodiversity. I think is bigger than corporations. It's bigger. I think it's just about humans respecting one another.
I think you're right. I think that's awesome. Well, look, I'm all out of questions, and it was a great time hanging out with you.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining our eighth podcast. We plan on continuing it. Uh, and look, I really am just deeply respectful of our friendship and your knowledge. Thank you again, Milind.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's been a pleasure. Really appreciate it.